The IDF is emerging from an especially busy weekend after 2 operations to recover the remains of hostages, a wide-scale elimination of senior Hamas operatives, and the bombing of weapons production facilities in the Dahya neighborhood of southern Beirut. On top of all of that, the IDF also contributed to a covert counter-terrorism operation in Judea and Samaria, all while the flotilla of publicity seeking is nearing the coast of the Gaza Strip. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host, Yair Pinto, bringing you the truth about what is happening in Israel. The big headline today is that Israel and Iran are on a trajectory that could bring them into a direct war after a disturbing report about Iran stealing secret nuclear documents from Israel. The report emerged in the El Mayadin portal, which is a known mouthpiece for Iran's Revolutionary Guards. It states that Iranian security services obtained thousands of secret documents on Israel's nuclear facilities and strategic projects, and mentioned the recent arrests of Israeli citizens charged with passing information to Iran as proof that the Islamic Republic is capable of this. And meanwhile, regime officials in Tehran are accusing the International Atomic Energy Agency of relying on unverified and politically influenced sources for a recent report that included information that Iran has been carrying out experiments on nuclear weapons development for several years and stockpiled large quantities of highly enriched uranium. An official statement by the regime claims that suspicious materials were found at the nuclear sites and arrived through contamination from hostile activity. TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will explain why Tehran has not yet responded to the United States proposal for a nuclear deal, which Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, attacked but did not explicitly reject, and whether the United States president is losing patience. In a recent conversation with reporters on Air Force One, President Trump reiterated that he will not accept continued uranium enrichment, declaring that if they enrich, we will have to do it the other way. There will be no choice. Back to Israel, a covert operation in Rafah over the weekend resulted in the recovery of remains of abductee Netpong Pinta, who was kidnapped on October 7, 2023 and died in captivity. In the same operation, the IDF eliminated the head of the organization that abducted Netpong, as well as other hostages, including the Bibas family and Gadi Chagai and Judy Lynn Weinstein, whose remains were recovered last week. And meanwhile, a precise IDF operation took out Hamas terrorists disguised as journalists operating from a command and control compound in the courtyard of El Mayadin Hospital in Gaza, used to plan attacks against Israel. In related news, the international aid organization responsible for food distribution in Gaza made an announcement over the weekend that Hamas is to blame for hundreds of thousands of remaining hungry Gazans because Hamas's threats made distribution too dangerous after the food distribution centers in Gaza did not open on Saturday. And elsewhere, amidst reports of battles near the European hospital in Khan Younis, the terror organization released a new footage of the abductee in captivity and claimed that IDF forces encircled the place where he was held. They added that Israel will not be able to get him out alive. However, the IDF said that no rescue attempt was made while his mother, Einav, cried out in anguish, "I cannot bear this nightmare any longer." Also, the IDF located the remains of former Hamas leader Muhammad Sinwar inside a tunnel in Khan Younis amongst the remains of other terrorists. And forensics teams are working to identify these remains right now, and preliminary signs indicate that they belong to other senior Hamas officials. The IDF has also released footage of this tunnel, which ran underneath the European hospital in Khan Younis. The footage shows command and control rooms, weapons, and further intelligence findings, and the IDF spokesperson's unit said that Hamas continues to use hospitals in Gaza for terror, cynically and cruelly exploiting the civilian population, the Palestinians. And in the northern arena, residents of Beirut, Lebanon, have once again had to flee from their homes because Hezbollah built a drone factory right in the middle of the residential neighborhood of Dahya. So the IDF struck this facility over the weekend, putting an end to a project meant to produce thousands of UAVs, drones, with Iranian guidance and with Iranian funding. And meanwhile, in northern Samaria, in the heart of Jenin, and in broad daylight, the IDF captured the big fish of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Palestinian media portals reported that this evil man, who was one of the senior terrorist operatives in the regional area, and the IDF confirmed he was captured indeed. We'll share with you the details which can be shared at this point, but not all of them. And finally, in the Mediterranean, a ridiculous flotilla of TikTok children is scheduled to reach Gaza at any moment, or maybe not. There are growing signs that they don't want even to reach the Gaza Strip, but would rather have a confrontation at sea with the IDF so that they can make a video about it to share with their followers. The good ship Medellin, which is carrying 12 well-known anti-Israel activists and a symbolic amount of food, is expected to arrive at Gaza's shores by Monday if the IDF does not intercept it. The most famous of the ship passengers is Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, and she declared, "The mood is upbeat, Israel and Zionism are the source of all the world's problems." Interesting. Danger lies ahead, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 611 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region who are taking their orders from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we start, I want to thank you for helping us spread the truth, and if you want to support our work, please hit that subscribe button or visit our page tbnisrael.com/give or hit that donate button on YouTube. Thank you so much. Let's begin with the latest headlines out of the Gaza Strip. The IDF carried out a targeted strike on Thursday to take out operatives of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist organization. These men were posing as journalists and working inside a command and control compound that had been set up in the courtyard of the El Mayadin hospital in the Gaza City area. The IDF says that this compound was used by the terrorists to plan and carry out terror schemes against our forces and against the citizens of the State of Israel. But they won't be doing that any longer. And meanwhile, in a joint covert operation by the IDF and the Shin Bet, the body of the Thai hostage Netpong Pinta was recovered on Friday from Rafah. He had been abducted from Kibbutz Nir Oz in the 7th of October massacre and murdered earlier in the war by the El Mujahideen Brigades. It's another Palestinian terrorist organization that operates in Gaza. The operation to recover his remains so that they can be given a respected burial was made possible after a terrorist was interrogated by the Shin Bet and revealed the location of his remains. Netpong leaves behind a wife and a 9-year-old son in Thailand, and we grieve with them for his loss. This brings the number of captives who died in captivity in Gaza to 33 out of 55 hostages remaining, 20 alive, 2 whose condition is unknown, and 4 other foreigners, including 2 from Thailand, 1 from Nepal, and another one from Tanzania. The IDF notes that the same terror group is responsible for the abduction and the murder of Netpong Pinta, and he also murdered Shiri Bibas and her children, and Gadi Hagai and Judy Weinstein, whose remains were recovered earlier this week in an operation that remains a secret with much still unknown. However, we do know that precise intelligence from the Shin Bet, the military intelligence, and the IDF enabled a complex mission. And another set of remains that were recovered this week by the IDF belonged to former Hamas leader Mohammed Sinwar, who was eliminated about 3 weeks ago in an Air Force strike on a tunnel near the European hospital in Khan Yunis. The remains of 10 other individuals were found near Sinwar, and their identities are being examined at the Abu Kabir Institute for Forensic Medicine in Israel. It is presumed that they were other Sinur Hamas figures, but their precise identities have not yet been determined. In any case, the operation that led to the recovery of these remains took place overnight between Friday and Saturday as part of the 98th Division's operations inside Khan Yunis. Forces encircling the European hospital in the eastern part of the city worked alongside the underground route as part of the tunnel was bombed by the Air Force under the Shin Bet guidance. It is important to point out that these evil men were eliminated while inside an underground command and control site beneath the European hospital in Khan Yunis, endangering the hospital's civilians. An IDF statement said that the Hamas terrorist organization continues to use hospitals in the Gaza Strip for terror purposes, cynically and cruelly exploiting the civilian population in and around these hospitals. The strike by the Southern Command and the Air Force of Israel used precise intelligence from military intelligence and from the Shin Bet and involved real-time decisions by the chief of the IDF staff and the chief of the Shin Bet. This was done in order to minimize the harm to the civilians and maximize the harm to the terrorists because the IDF knew exactly who it was hitting that day. Mohammed Sinwar had been a veteran Hamas commander, deeply involved in planning and executing the 7th of October massacre and the operations in the Gaza Strip. After Muhammad's death's elimination, his brother, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, appointed him to be the military wing's leader, where he proved to be very effective at shaping strategy and policy of this organization. And speaking of Hamas policy, on Saturday they began broadcasting reports that the IDF is besieging the place where a hostage, Matan Tanzaker, is held. These reports included a photograph of him that hadn't been previously published and a statement that was released at 4 p.m. on Saturday saying that Israel will not be able to take him out alive. If he is killed during the rescue attempt, the occupation army will bear responsibility after we kept him alive for a year and 8 months. However, the IDF clarified that no rescue attempt was made and that the security establishment is calling this psychological terror as the IDF teams are with the family, explaining that all intelligence indicates that no Israeli hostage is held in that area. And elsewhere, in a joint IDF Shin Bet action on Saturday in Gaza City, senior terrorist Assad Abu Sharia, head of the recent years of the Katib el-Mujahideen terrorist group in Gaza, was terminated. This evil man was amongst those who raided Kibbutz Nir Oz on October 7, 2023, and he was directly involved in the kidnapping and the murder of Shiri Ariel and Kfir Bibas, the abduction of Gadi Hagai and Judy Lynn Weinstein, and the kidnapping and the murder of Netpong Pinta and another foreign civilian that is still held in captivity. But he didn't only operate in the Gaza Strip, he was also active in recruiting operatives in Judea and Samaria and inside Israel to carry out attacks. The Bibas family responded to these reports by issuing a statement that news of the commander's elimination is another step in closing the circle for us and accepting the great loss of Shiri, Ariel, and Kfir. They added, Shiri, Ariel, and Kfir will not return, but there is some comfort in knowing that vile murderers will not harm another family. We thank the IDF soldiers and the security forces for their bravery and dedication, risking their lives for all of our security. And in related news, the collapse of Gaza's food distribution system worsened on Saturday when the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation announced that it had to shut down its operations due to Hamas threats. The GHF said in the statement that Hamas is the reason that hundreds of thousands of Gaza residents are hungry today. The threats against our field teams made activity impossible without jeopardizing their lives. Hamas wants to return to the broken system it once controlled, diverting aid, manipulating distribution, and putting its interests above the interests of the Palestinian people's basic needs. Despite the threats, the GHF stressed it will not be deterred, adding, "We are committed to independent, safe, and secure distribution of aid. We are adjusting operations to overcome the threats and aim to resume the distribution immediately. As you can see, some real progress was made in the fight against terrorism on Israel's borders over the weekend, but this came at a cost. The IDF announced that a force of Maglan reconnaissance and a combat engineering soldiers attacked a building in Khan Yunis on Friday morning that, according to the IDF intelligence, served as a Hamas stronghold with several tunnel shafts beneath. The force entered at 6:05 a.m. after tanks fired at the building and charges were set inside, but about 5 minutes later, a huge booby-trap charge went off, resulting in the collapse of parts of this structure. Only near 12 were the bodies of the fallen IDF soldiers recovered, and their names were later released. We will pay our last respects to them at the conclusion of this report. In the meantime, please continue to spread the truth, share, and follow us. And most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. As Israel ramps up its war efforts, reserve soldiers are being called up again, many of them already carrying the weight of everything they've been through. To keep going, they need more than just gear. They need focus, steady energy, physical strength, and a lot of faith. I've been there. It's tough, mentally and physically. And prayer gave me the spiritual strength I needed. But I also needed something to help my body stay sharp and energized. That's where Vinia came in. It's an Israeli supplement made from red grape cells. It helps improve the blood flow to the heart, to the brain, and to your muscles, so your body gets more oxygen and nutrients. You feel more focused, more alert, and more able to push through the long days. I took it during my reserve service, and I'm still taking it today. It became part of my daily routine. They also have a coffee version, and it gives a lift without the crash afterwards. So guys, if you want to try it for yourself, visit Vinia, tbnisrael.com or call 800-638-1944. Again, that's Vinia, tbnisrael.com or call 800-638-1944. Now, we're getting back into the news and shifting our focus to the Iranian threat. For this part, I will hand it over to TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani, who will brief us on the most disturbing details from Iran's announcement over the weekend. Did Iran really steal secret nuclear documents from Israel? Iranian security services released a statement saying they obtained thousands of secret documents on Israel's nuclear facilities and strategic projects. The documents were transferred to secret sites in Iran, and simultaneously, United States President Donald Trump threatened that if Iran does not stop enriching uranium, the United States will stop it in another way, hinting at a military action. So Mati, what's going on?
This last weekend saw the Iranian misinformation and disinformation campaigns increase and kick in to an incredibly high gear. What have we seen these last couple of days? The Iranians have made some bold claims stating that Israel has been penetrated and they stole a bunch of our nuclear documents. Now, there's no evidence of this, but a series of news articles runs in El Mayadeen, a Lebanese newspaper, over the last couple of days. And in that, the Iranian government claims that it was able to steal and bring back to Tehran a large pile of Israeli nuclear documents. No one in Israel can confirm that this ever happened. No one in the international community can confirm it happened, but the Iranians are strongly suggesting that they've been able to steal highly classified, highly sensitive documents from Israel and bring them back to Iran. They're doing more than that though too. They've also started throwing a bunch of very, let's call it creative excuses about how the IAEA, the International Agency of Atomic Energy, how it found enriched uranium in its facilities, saying that Israeli intelligence sprinkled, just like that, residue that would be identified as nuclear enriched uranium. So we're in a very bizarre weekend here. It seems like the Iranians are firing in all directions, trying to divert the conversation from what's really on the table, which is the US push for them not to get to weapons-grade uranium or create a bomb. So let's break this all down. So first of all, why are the Iranians doing this? So why would a country like Iran, they have a very, let's call it inconsistent history so far when it comes to telling the truth. But why would a country like Iran make these kind of bold statements stating that they were able to steal documents from Israel? Well, for several reasons. One, this is something that Israel did to them in the past. A few years back, Prime Minister Netanyahu, also back then Prime Minister, had a press conference where he portrayed to the world media an incredible pile of CDs, documents, and many other storage media in which Israeli intelligence were able to penetrate warehouses in Iran and pull out, it was tens of thousands of documents about their nuclear program. And that was a moment in history where Israel was able to substantially shame the Iranians and show that we were able to penetrate their intelligence. Since then, in the last 18 months, that's happened many times more. But if you look back to the last 10 years of history, that was a moment in time that will be remembered. So the Iranians are possibly talking to that moment. Two, they're talking to their people. They realize that they're in a very uncomfortable spot when it comes to the negotiations and military pressure. Again, just to remind you, it's been over a month and a half now of very unfruitful negotiations between the US and the Iranians, where the Iranians consistently, and when I say consistently, I mean very consistently, deny every request made by the Americans to stop enriching uranium and stop stockpiling enriched uranium. And in fact, I would even say in the last 2-3 weeks, the negotiations have been completely stuck, and the pressure is mounting both from the US administration and also from Israel of taking a different course of action. So this might be just a bait and switch attempt by the Iranians to switch the conversation publicly, especially when it relates to their own people, from the threat of an attack or sanctions once more, to a conversation about, look, we have a win, look at this win over here, how we've humiliated Israel. Is it really possible? I mean, yes, it is possible. But if we look at the attempts, or I should say the success stories we know of what Iran's been able to do on an intelligence level when it comes to Israel in the last couple years, they've been very unimpressive. So much so that they've been a joke within Israeli society, and I hope they maintain that consistent sort of status, where in Israeli society they haven't been able to hire or recruit anyone that's a high-ranking anything in Israeli society, and it's always been or new immigrants or Muslim elements of society that were able to be bribed to give very low intel level of intel to the Iranians. They weren't ever able to penetrate a facility. They weren't able to steal any classified documents or anything substantial. It was always low-level things, taking pictures of facilities, graffiti, very low-level propaganda attempts, etc. So far they've been very unsuccessful at doing anything like this. And if they were indeed able to actually penetrate Israeli nuclear facilities or intelligence organizations and extract substantial intelligence, that would be a substantial deviation from what they've been able to do thus far. It doesn't mean it's impossible, it means it's very unlikely. I'd say more than that. If they actually had these documents, they would probably already have leaked some of them to prove what level intelligence they've been able to obtain. And they haven't done that. All they've said is, we have it, sort of this, smokescreen of intelligence, rather than actually showing any proof of what they were able to show. Let me remind you that when Israel was able to steal Iranian nuclear documents, what they did is they went in front of the world press and showcased them and leaked the documents themselves to show the validity of the claims. And Iran hasn't been able to do that. I mentioned also the Iranians have been making these very generic claims of, we didn't actually enrich uranium to the level you're talking about. It's the Israeli intelligence that have planted this in our own plants. It's this very bizarre, roundabout, counterintuitive conversation that doesn't really make much sense. So what is the response of the world? Well, let me just remind you, we're at the end of the deadline season between the US and the Iranian negotiations. And President Trump has been very bold, very strong in stating that the negotiations will end with Iran not having enriched uranium. So much so that in the last couple of days, he made a statement to camera aboard on Air Force One, stating that there will be no agreement or situation where Iran isn't dismantled from her nuclear enriched uranium stockpiles and doesn't stop enriching uranium. And he goes back to the threat of there will be military option. So an interesting change of events here. It's not entirely clear where we're going here. What it seems like is that Iran is grasping. They're grasping to create clout and influence over their society to show that they had the ability to penetrate Israel. They're grasping at the international community, trying to do something to prevent an imminent attack by the Israeli Air Force or the US. And possibly they're trying to balance these two pressures. One, to save face internally and not to look like they've capitulated or given in to everything requested by Western powers, specifically the US. And at the same time, not to push too far against the US or against Israel to the point where everyone realizes there's no chance for negotiation and we're back at the table of thinking about a nuclear option. So Trump specifically says, we don't want to attack, but we may have no choice. And Israel chimes into that with a very consistent message over the last, say, 4 to 6 weeks. Prime Minister Netanyahu goes on record this last weekend and says, we maintain the right to attack unilaterally. That means without the knowledge or possibly the support of the US. It's not clear what that exactly means, but Israel has maintained time and time again that we simply will not move on with life with the Iranians stockpiling enriched uranium and continuing to enrich uranium. And let me remind you why. It is an existential threat for Israel to have the Iranians push for a nuclear bomb. This isn't business as usual. This isn't India. It isn't Pakistan. It isn't the UK that have, or France that have, one type or another of nuclear capabilities. This is a country that has on their flag, on their sort of, mission statement, the desire to end life in Israel for the Jewish state and the Jewish people. That's not something they're just talking about. They've been trying to do exactly that. So when you think of that, you need to understand that Israel means business when it says it won't sit idly while the Iranians push for nuclear capability. And it seems, based on Trump's statements this last weekend, that neither will the US. So what is Iran doing? Iran is making a whole lot of noise, trying to divert attention, and on paper, say that they've been able to achieve a win against Israel, steal documents related to Israeli nuclear programs. They've shown no evidence of that whatsoever, and their record so far shows that they've been unable to penetrate Israeli intelligence organizations in any substantial way at all. In fact, I would say it's been a relative failure up till this point. And then at the same time, they continue to enrich uranium at a rapid pace. They've stockpiled an incredible amount of enriched uranium, and they continue to enrich uranium as we speak. And this is something that's going to lead to some kind of action by the US, by Israel, by both possibly. And Iran is aware of that and is trying to divert the conversation to a place where, once again, they want a weak agreement where the US agrees for them to continue holding on to enriched uranium and Israel doesn't get to attack. Anyway, things are moving very, very quickly. It's once again been a very tense weekend when it comes to the Iranian relationship and the Iranian nuclear bomb program. Make sure to keep on track with everything that's happening here. We update on this topic every single day. Now back to Yael Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mati, for bringing clarity to this very confusing situation. Guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development and we'll bring you the whole truth about Israel. To support our work, please hit that subscribe button, and also you can hit that donate button on YouTube and help us create more videos like this one. And now we're staying on the subject of Iran as we take a look at the vast smuggling network run by Iran's Revolutionary Guards, numbering thousands of operatives, that is funneling weapons to Yemen's Houthi militias via Pakistan and East Asia ports. This story was revealed by military analyst Yasser Salah over the weekend in an interview with the Saudi news portal El Hadet. Salah says it is a special unit affiliated with the Quds Force specializing in smuggling and organizing crime of every type, including the trafficking of weapons, human beings, and narcotics. He confirmed that the number of smuggling cells is in the thousands and uses several routes. However, because of tight surveillance at Iran's Bandar Abbas port, from which most shipments departed, the Iranians began using alternate routes. Components of different weapons are first shipped to Pakistan and then moved to Yemen alongside the other goods such as food and medicine. This attracts less attention from surveillance forces, and this is according to Salah. The Indian Ocean, Bab el-Mandab Straits, and the Red Sea are regularly patrolled by an international naval coalition called Combined Task Force 153 in an effort to reduce piracy and the flow of contraband that those strategic waterways are trafficking. But with regional governments, including Iran and Pakistan, directly contributing to the problem, there's only so much that can be accomplished. Now, we're shifting our focus to Israel's northern arena because there were some dramatic developments over the weekend in Lebanon. After about a month in which the IDF considered striking Hezbollah infrastructure in Beirut's Dahya quarter, the IDF spokesman issued an unusual notice on Friday evening saying the IDF will soon strike several underground UAV production facilities established in the heart of the civilian population in Dahya, Beirut. The IDF says that despite understandings between Israel and Lebanon, it identified Hezbollah's aerial unit 127 producing thousands of UAVs guided and funded by Iranian terror elements. Shortly after the notice was issued, the Air Force struck these underground drone workshops located in tunnels and bunkers that are built under Beirut's Dahya neighborhood, plus a drone workshop in Ain Kana in southern Lebanon. The IDF stated that activity at these sites is a blatant violation of the understandings between Israel and Lebanon. The strikes caused extensive destruction, leading to the predictable statement of condemnation from Lebanese President Joseph Aoun against Israel. However, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz reiterated that Israel will act forcefully if Lebanon does not honor the agreement and stressed that without security for Israel, there will be no security or stability in Beirut or anywhere else in Lebanon. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue reporting on every development on the Lebanon front, and as always, we ask you to help us by sharing our videos on YouTube, following us on social media, and above all, click the subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground and you'll know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And now we shift our focus to the waters off the coast of Gaza, where a flotilla filled with Israel-hating anti-Semitic celebrities is sailing forth to try and provoke a confrontation with the IDF so that they can make videos about it and post them on TikTok. The good ship Mandalin is expected to be approaching the Gaza coastline by Monday morning if it is not intercepted by the IDF, and if I can offer a personal opinion, I almost wonder what would happen if the IDF simply ignored them and let them land on the beach and try to find someone to give the tiny symbolic amount of food to that they've brought with them. That would make a very impressive video for TikTok. And I'm sure that they know it, so they'll probably avoid hitting that beach as long as possible, sailing around instead and hoping to run into IDF ships that they can provoke into confrontation so that they can make their videos. So we know that that's what they really would like to do, because they already said to the Sunday Times news portal that if there is a confrontation with the IDF, they'll broadcast it live worldwide. The most well-known of the activists on the ship is Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, who has done some important work in raising awareness of environmental issues in the past, but she's moved on from that to speak out on all kinds of international relations issues, including the conflicts in Ukraine, Armenia, Western Sahara, and of course, Israel. She sent a voice message to the Sunday Times saying, "It's pretty calm here, but spirits are high. We're happy to do this, to sail." When asked what brought her to join this flotilla, she replied, "Simply being human. I saw the images from Gaza, heard the reports. I felt I had to do something, no matter what. I care about justice. I can't watch genocide, quote unquote, without acting. We know the risks, but silence is more dangerous. You can't be a climate activist and ignore marginalized people and their suffering. Both crises stem from systems sacrificing the many and the planet so a few keep geopolitical power at any cost. What is happening in Palestine, Gaza, is genocide, ecological murder." Whatever you might think of that, it is important to note that Greta Thunberg has never issued any kind of statement of condemnation for the actual mass murder of Israelis and others that Hamas carried out on October 7, 2023. She and many other pro-Palestinian activists simply ignored the events of that day as if they never happened. And speaking of which, some of Thunberg's fellow travelers on this cruise, which set sail on June 1st from Sicily, present a narrative that they're simply trying to bring humanitarian aid to hungry people. Yet Germany's Bild news portal reported that at least some on board hold anti-Western and pro-terror ideology calling for Israel's destruction. Besides Thunberg, the crew includes Rima Hassan, who is a Palestinian French MEP, barred from entering Israel, as well as Omar Fayyad, who's a journalist with Qatar's Al Jazeera, Yasmin Akhar, who filmed herself dancing during Iran's attacks against Israel, and Tiago Avila, who attended the funeral of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon. Rabah Viar, a French activist on board, said during the media interview that with time we approach the tension point, but the international community also mobilizes. We are calm on deck. Hope to reach Palestine grows as we near. The Israeli army might attack or board us, but other ships reach there. That's the scenario we prepare for. We will reach Palestine. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to do our duty and report on this flotilla of untruthful people, and perhaps more than ever before, I ask you to continue helping us spread the truth by sharing these videos on YouTube, following us on social media, and subscribing to this channel. Now, as I said before, I want to conclude by paying final respects to the recently soldiers who fell in battle to defend me, my family, and the rest of the people of Israel when they entered a booby-trapped building in Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip that collapsed on top of them after the explosive charges went off. These fallen soldiers of Israel are Major Sergeant Chen Gross, Sergeant Major Yoav Ravel, and Sergeant First Class Tom Rothstein, and Staff Sergeant Uri Cohen of the Yahalom Combat Engineering Unit. 8 soldiers have fallen in the past week in the Gaza Strip, and 424 since the ground maneuver began. So guys, we ask you to join us in praying for their families, their comrades, and their communities. Please keep praying for Israel. Help us spread the truth, share our content with everybody who wants to know what truthfully is happening in this land, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And now, let us pray together for Israel. But let's make it personal. Let's pray for the hostages, the 20 that still remain alive in the Gaza Strip, and the remains of those who are taken by Hamas terrorists to be returned to their loved ones in Israel for a proper burial. Let's pray for the IDF soldiers that are risking their lives every day in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Syria, and in Judea and Samaria. And let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem.